Hi everyone, Heather here with astrologywithheather.com, and today I am doing a special tutorial all about solar return charts, and we're going to be focusing specifically in this video about the sun's placement in the solar return chart and what that means for your year ahead. And so what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to first off explain what solar return charts are. I'm going to show you how to generate your own solar return chart for free via the free software on astro.com. And then I'm going to let you know a little bit about how you can figure out very simply and very easily where your sun is in terms of the houses in your solar return chart and what this indicates and in terms of the year ahead for you and what your focus is going to be, because the sun's placement in the solar return chart is an important focal point for the year ahead, and it tells a lot about what you're going to be dealing with, what you're going to be focusing on, what motivates you, where a lot of the energy and action for the year ahead will be. And so before we get into this, I do want to just explain to you what a solar return chart is for those who don't know. So a solar return chart is a chart that is cast for the exact moment that the sun returns to the minute and degree, to the degree and minute, so the exact placement in the zodiac that it was at the time that you were born. And so you have a solar return once a year, on or around your birthday. Sometimes it's on the exact date, sometimes it's not, because the Gregorian calendar is a little offset from the natural cycles of the moon and the sun and, all of that. So it'll usually be within, one day of your actual birthday. But what this does is it shows you a general overview of the energy that you're going to be dealing with for the year ahead, and the biggest major themes, the major energies. You can actually use solar return charts to make predictions about, when somebody's likely to meet somebody, to get married, to have career success, to have changes in financial stability, to, make a big move. And some astrologers rely more heavily on different things to make predictions. And for me in particular, I utilize the transits in the solar return primarily, and I use progressions as sort of a third emphasis that, sometimes I may or may not dive into. And this is because if you're a working, practicing astrologer, you have to sort of start to pick your tools because there are so many tools and techniques out there, right? There's so much that you can utilize. And if you were to utilize it all, you'd be spending days on each chart, and it just wouldn't be viable for you to be giving readings like that. And so, as you start to embark on, your journey of learning astrology, if you're a student of astrology, and once you start doing readings for people, you'll start to see what works really well for you and what, maybe isn't as important to look at for you personally. All of these different techniques have a lot of these techniques, I shouldn't say every technique has validity because I don't know that, and sometimes they don't, but there are many different techniques that are very valid, that are very accurate, and it just depends on the astrologer and the preference, for what it is that you're going to be utilizing. And so for me personally, if somebody books a single question reading, for an example, where they're asking me, and this is like 1 out of every 5 to 10 readings, it'll be, when am I going to meet my marriage partner? When will I fall in love? When will I meet Mr. Right, or whatever? And the first thing that I always do, if I don't see anything in the transits coming up in the next year or two, is I'll pull up the solar return charts for, the next 10 years, maybe 15 years if I have to, and I will look at the solar return to determine the most likely time periods when somebody might get married. And there are specific indicators for that. And the sun being in the 7th house can be one of the indicators. It's not the only indicator, and we'll get into that as we go through this video. But I'll look at that, and there'll maybe be 1 or 2 years where it'll stick out, where this could be potentially when you'll meet your marriage partner, or you'll get engaged or get married. And then I will go in and verify with the transits. And if the transits also show similar energy, and it looks like there's a potential there, I will determine a specific time, and then I'll look at the progressions as sort of a third verification. And so usually you need to have at least the transits in the solar return lining up appropriately for something big like that to happen. So anyway, so that's the way that I do things. So you can look at things like that in the solar return chart. And the biggest thing and the most important thing to look at in the solar return chart is, of course, the sun, right? Because this is a solar-based chart. It's based on the sun's position in the zodiac at the time of your birth and when it returns to that position every single year. And so again, what this does is it gives a very general overview of the energy for the year ahead, and what you can do from there if you are a practicing astrologer or a student of astrology is look at transits in order to determine timing of these events that show up potentially in the solar return chart. And so, and before we get into the next phase of this video, I guess I do want to make a quick announcement. I am in the process right now of creating really in-depth solar return year-ahead readings for each of the 12 sun signs. When you listen to my normal weekly forecasts, I always tell you to listen to your rising sign first and your sun sign is secondary. These forecasts that I'm creating right now are specific for your sun sign and for your own personal solar year beginning with your birthday. And so, I'm going really in-depth into these. I'll be releasing one video per month, but I'm actually doing a pre-sale on all 12 signs on all of these videos right now. You'll get 33% off of the normal price for these videos. As soon as they are out and released, they're going to go up in price. And so you can get it at a very heavily discounted rate, and this is going to be one of the most detailed predictions that you can get for the year ahead. It's going to be based solely on your sun sign. You don't need to know your time of birth accurately, and there's no other astrologer that I know of that's doing something like this. And so what I'm doing here is I'm creating a forecast. It's going to be 75 to 90 minutes, and also a PDF that's going to give you key dates and specific influences based on your birthday. And then I will be putting timestamps in this PDF for where I talk about this in the videos, so you can kind of go back and forth and cross-reference. And in the video itself, I'll let you know when to look at the PDF to find specific timing, so you can get a very accurate reading out of this, and a lot of detailed information about what's coming up for you for the year ahead, because the sun in Western tropical astrology is one of the most, if not the most important influence in your birth chart. And so looking at transits to the sun and looking at the solar return is going to give you a lot of really detailed information. And so I wanted to create a way to give accurate forecasts and predictions for as many people as possible at a discounted rate, because not everyone can afford to, book a full solar return reading, or, maybe you don't want to wait so long to get your reading, because sometimes I do have a wait time of up to several weeks. And so I wanted to create something for everyone that everyone can access, everybody can afford, and well, most people can afford, obviously, and that it can give you an accurate, detailed account of a lot of the important energies for the year ahead. And so the link to pre-order is in the description of this video down below. I'm very excited for this. I've been working on the first 3 signs of the zodiac: Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. And I'm really excited for the videos I'm creating. And so, so look down in the description below. I'll stop talking about that now for those who want me to just move on to the free information, which I will do gladly. But anyway, so the solar return chart. So there are a few different considerations for the solar return chart that make things a bit confusing, especially if you're a beginner. So there is a lot of debate within the astrology world as to which solar return chart to use. There are 3 different variations of the solar return. There is the solar return chart based on the birth location, which is what I predominantly use. There's the solar return chart based on your current location where you live, and that is another one that a lot of astrologers utilize. And then there's the solar return location of where you are at the exact time of your solar return. And so that could be anywhere in the world. If you travel, if you go to a different place, that one I tend to use sometimes as secondary, but really if you, in my opinion and in my experience with working with the solar return chart, I was actually taught to use the relocated solar return for where you are at the moment of your solar return, right? That's what a lot of Western astrologers use. And I did that for many years. It's, it can be quite accurate and successful. But when I moved, for the past 6 years, I've lived over 6 years now, I've lived far enough from my actual birthplace where the solar return is quite different. And I've noticed that the birth solar return chart is more accurate to actual events that are happening in my life. And that's, a very common thing. So when you're looking at the solar return, I highly recommend looking at just your birth location for a couple of different reasons. For one, this is a fixed energy, and it has to do with a cyclical pattern of the sun. And so the solar return in your natal location runs on a 33-year cycle, where once every 33 years, the sun in the solar return chart will be at approximately the same position within the houses as it was at the time of your birth. And so this is a look at cycles. This is a fixed energy. Every single year it's going to be whatever it's going to be. It's sort of looking at fate versus free will, whereas the solar return and the natal location are, fated events. It's more accurate to actual events that are going to be occurring for the year ahead. And it's something that's just set in motion. It's set in place. It doesn't change. The relocated solar return chart it gives you an idea more or less of your perspective on the events and how your free will changes the energy of whatever was set in motion with these solar return charts. I don't look at that as heavily. And so what I'm going to be talking about in this specific video is going to be the solar return based on the natal location. Sometimes people do come to me for a solar return reading and they ask me to look at their relocated solar return chart specifically, and I will do that, but I'll look at that in the context of how you're dealing with the events that are occurring, based on the solar return in the natal location. So hopefully that makes sense and that wasn't too confusing for you. So you're going to want to look at the natal location for the solar return. And I will be showing you how to pull up the energy or the chart for, the energy for the year ahead for the solar return in just a minute. But I do want to go back to that idea of the 33-year cycle real quick. And I'm going to be sharing my screen in just a second so you can get an idea of what it is that I'm talking about here. But with the solar return chart, you're going to be going through 3 different phases that sort of repeat over and over again once every 33 years. Each phase lasts, roughly 10, 11 years. And so you'll have about a 10-year period or 10 to 11-year period where you're going to have each solar return occurring with the sun in the angular houses, which are the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses. And then you're going to have 3 solar returns, 10 to 11 years of solar returns where you'll be having each solar return occurring in the succedent houses, which are the 2nd, 5th, 8th and 11th houses. And then you're going to be having a 3rd cycle of solar returns for 10 to 11 years where you'll be having the solar returns in the cadent houses. And those would be the 3rd, the 6th, the 9th, and the 12th houses. I'm visualizing the houses in my brain right now. And so each phase of this cycle represents a phase of your life where you're doing something a little bit different and your focus is a little bit different. And so I'm going to share my screen with you here. And so this is, and let's make this, can I make this big here? Yeah, so this is just a slide that I created for my foundational astrology course that I teach. And for those of you who are interested in learning the foundations of astrology, I will be launching a whole new cycle of classes late in the spring this year. And there is a wait list that you can sign up for so you can be the first to be notified once registration is open and once, I have the date set in motion. And I'll put that link down in the description below as well. But anyway, this is just a slide that I created as part of this course that I teach. And it explains the angular, succedent, and cadent houses. And so the angular houses, which would be, and it depends also where this cycle starts, depends on your sun's position in the birth chart, right? So everybody's going to be at a different point in their cycle, regardless of their age. But the 10-year cycle that has to do with the angular houses, which is the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th. The angular houses form sort of the structure of your chart. They're the backbone of the chart. They represent basic human needs through self, home and family, relationship, and career. And so during this 10 to 11-year cycle with the sun positioned in the solar return chart in the angular houses, you're going to be going through a process of focusing on making changes, new developments, and a lot of energy circulating around these angular houses. And so this is a period where you're restructuring your life, where you're changing your identity out in the world, where you're making changes to your home, your family, your place of living, where there's going to be a lot of importance placed on relationships and also the goals and direction in your life through your profession, through your public reputation, through your career. And so you'll be going through a 10-year cycle where it's just repeating over and over, where you'll have, the sun moving through these angular houses. Then you'll have a period of 10 to 11 years where you'll have the sun moving through the succeedant houses, which again are the 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th. And so these represent the more stable areas in your life in terms of your money, your sense of value, possessions through the 2nd house, your creative self-expression, children, love affairs, your passions, hobbies, interests, the things that you love to do because you love to do them in the 5th house. The 8th house is joint finances, other people's money, it's power struggles, it's sex, it's death, it's rebirth, it's the house of magic and the occult. And then you have another solar return that'll occur in the 11th house, which has to do with friends and social networks and groups of people that you surround yourself with by choice. And so that's going to be a period where those different areas will come into focus, sort of on repeat until you've moved on from that restructuring. And then you move to the cadent houses. The cadent houses are associated with activity and communication. It's the 3rd and 9th, which have to do with your day-to-day communications, your ideas, your belief systems, learning and education. It's the 6th and the 12th. The 6th has to do with what you do out in the world, your day-to-day life, your day-to-day routines, busyness. The 12th has to do with your spiritual practices, where you go for rest and reprieve, your subconscious realm. It's non-reality, right? It's non-linear. And so you'll go through these areas of focusing on all these areas of life for 10 to 11 years. And so that's how that cycle works for those who are interested in that. And so let's stop the share here. I'm also going to share with you, so now I'm going to get into how to determine your sun's position in the solar return chart, and then I'll talk a little bit about the sun in each sign and what that looks like. So I'm going to show you on Johnny Depp's chart because that's just a celebrity chart that I happen to have here. And let me share my screen with you so you can see it. So this is just using the free software on astro.com. I'll post a link for those who need it. And so this is what you do here. So first and foremost, you've picked the chart that you want. You might have to add a new person to put your data in. And so if you click on add a new person, you add your name, your gender, your birthday, your exact time of birth, because you do, for a solar return chart, you do need the exact time of birth. Otherwise, it's not going to necessarily be accurate because you need to know the exact degree and minute of the sun. For the forecast that I'm producing, it's not going to be as important because this is not an actual solar return reading. We're not looking at a chart with houses, so it's going to be a little bit different. But for a solar return chart reading and for determining where your focus is going to be for the year ahead, you're going to want to know the exact time of your birth and the exact location, because we're going to do this based on the natal location. And so I already have Johnny Depp's information input here. Always make sure that the reference place is the birthplace to look at the birthplace solar return. If you're somebody who wants to look at the relocated solar return, you can change the reference place by clicking modified data, and you can put in any place in the world where you want to spend your solar return. If you want to see how you can change the energy a little bit in terms of the way that you perceive it, the way that you deal with it, the way that you utilize what you're given. And that's what the main thing that I like to show people and teach people in astrology is, first off, it's important to know what you're working with, right? Good, bad, ugly, whatever. It's important to know what you have and what's coming up for you, so that way you can utilize the energy in the best possible way. And so learning what you have as like a framework, right? The foundation, the static energy, the fated occurrences, the things that are not going to be necessarily changing, I think that's an important precursor to looking at the relocated solar return chart, just in my opinion personally. But if you want to look at that, you can. So this is for Johnny Depp, right? And then you're going to go to sections, and then it'll say chart type right here. And then it'll first say natal chart wheel. You'll click on the drop-down menu, and then you go down to this area, solar and lunar returns, and just click on solar return chart. And then from there, and this is under extended chart selection. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that. So if you go to free horoscopes, extended chart selection, select the horoscope that you want to pull up. So select your own name. You might have to input the information like I mentioned before. Make sure the reference place is your birthplace, and then click on solar return chart under the drop-down menu under chart type where it says sections. Then you'll click here to show the chart. And so then you'll get a chart that looks like this. And so don't pay attention to what any of all of this means for this specific video. This is a lot of different things, and I'll give you some reference materials at the end for those who want to go deeper and to explore their solar return a little bit more in detail. But look at where the sun is, right? The sun is this circle with another circle on the inside. You don't need to really know anything about astrology to utilize this tutorial in this video. Just pull up this chart. Okay, and so this is the solar return chart for Johnny Depp. This is his solar year. So this is the year for him that begins on June 8th of 2019. You can see that he's actually born on June 9th, but his solar return for this coming year in 2019 actually happens on June 8th at 10:32 p.m. And so that's the exact moment that his sun will return to its birth point. It's like the new moon of your sun, right? And so this is a brand new cycle for you. This is like the new year, the rebirth of your solar energy. And so it's very important to look at this, right? And to see what's going on at the time of the solar return. And this is a really important time also of seeding new intentions, introspection, going inward, setting goals for the year ahead, that type of thing. And the solar return chart can actually show you what types of goals maybe you should be focusing on setting, right? Because that's where your focus is this year. That's where the energy is. And so, you know, the solar return sun placement can be very important in helping guide you in the right direction as to where to utilize your energy for the year ahead for your personal solar year. So Johnny Depp's solar year will be, you know, June 8th of 2019 all the way through to June 8th, 9th, or 10th of 2020. And so in terms of determining the houses, the little numbers here on this inner circle that you can see my cursor's on, this is going to tell you the houses, right? So we have 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and then 12th. And then the little sun here, you look at what sliver of the pie the sun is in, right? Pretty simple. For Johnny Depp, his sun is in the 5th house. The 5th house, you know, rules things like, first off, it rules actors and actresses. So, you know, that would be potentially a good thing where he's focusing on his acting career, but he actually has some difficult energy with his solar return chart. I would say that this could be a year of disillusionment for Johnny Depp in romance. He could have a lot of confusion around his career, around his identity, around different acting roles. Knowing that Johnny Depp used to have a drug problem, maybe he still does. I don't keep up with what celebrities are doing. This could be a year where he might be more prone to slipping back into addictions, to escapism through drugs, alcohol, things like that. He could be a little bit overly self-indulgent, but that's because of this T-square, right? That has nothing to do with this 5th house energy. The energy of the 5th house, though, shows that he's going to be focusing his energy on his hobbies, his interests, the things that he loves to do, his career as an actor. He's going to be focusing more on his passions, on play, on potentially romance, right? This could be a year of a lot of, you know, romantic encounters that could be a little confusing and difficult for him potentially, but romance nonetheless, right? And, you know, if he has any children, I don't think he does. I don't know if he does. You know, this is a year where he'd be focusing more on his role as a father. He'd be focusing on those 5th house themes, right? So the 5th house is the house of our passions. It's the house of play. It's the house of our inner child. It's the house of romance. It's the house of fun. And it's the house of entertainment, right? That's why it rules entertainers like actors. And so that's where his focus for the year ahead is going to be, is on those 5th house themes. Okay, and so you can have your sun in the solar return in any of these 12 houses. You just got to pull up your chart for the year and check it out. And if you want to look at a solar return chart for a different year, I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. So all you have to do is go to sections and start date for charts marked with the asterisk, right? So the solar return chart right here. You just change the year. So if you wanted to look at his chart for 2020, you would just type in 2020 is the year, and then click to show the solar return chart. And then 2020, his focus, he's shifting from being in the succeeding houses to being in the angular houses for 2020. So that's, you know, a new cycle that he's starting there, because there's like 3, you know, different cycles within this 33-year cycle. And so his focus for 2020 is going to be more on himself, his own self-interest, his own needs. This could be a time where he gets more recognition. And you will get into this when we get into the houses, but I just wanted to show you how to pull it up for yourself for those who are just not aware of this. So I'm going to stop my share here. And then maybe I'll pull up, actually, let's pull up something that shows the actual houses so you can have something on the screen here to look at. Okay, so I'm pulling that up and I'm going to share this now instead. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing this. It's just the little image that I had on that that slide that I just pulled up for you. That was from my course that I taught. And so this is just sort of a general overview, some of the key words for each of the 12 houses. And so I'm going to go through each house and explain to you. If you have the sun in the solar return chart in each house, I'm going to explain to you what your direction is going to be for that year, where your focus is going to lie. And then from there, when you read the solar return chart, so the placement of the sun is going to be most important. The angles and transits and different aspects to the sun, that'll be secondary. And then from there, you look at the positions of other planets. And so even if you have the sun in the second house and your focus is on money, sense of values, earned income, possessions, as it says in this little, pie wheel thing here, you could also have a stellium of planets, which is 3 or more planets in your 9th house. And so you could be also having a focus this year on travel, on adventure, on expanding your horizons through experience, through learning, through knowledge, right? And so you can have more than one focus in the solar return chart, and that's a topic for a later date. But in terms of like the main energy, you're going to be looking at what your sun is doing. And so if you have your sun in the first house in the solar return chart, you're going to be focusing on yourself, your own needs, your own self-interest, developing your identity out in the world. This could be, depending on the other aspects to the sun and what's going on in your chart, this could be a year of transformation of the self, transformation of the personality. Also, I should mention, a new moon in the solar return chart is a huge year of, it's a beginning and ending cycle. It's a lot of new beginnings. So, that's actually a powerful year where a lot of things change. And especially if you have an eclipse in your solar return chart, like a solar eclipse, that's going to be a lot of really faded karmic transitions, new beginnings, upheaval. You'll be moving in a completely new direction. If you have a lunar eclipse too. And also if you have a full moon in your solar return chart, that's going to indicate that this is a year that's a culmination of something that you started during a previous cycle, probably the last time that you had a new moon solar return, right? And so you can kind of look back in history and see what you started that year, where your sun was, where the new moon came exact in your solar return chart. And then if you have a year that you have a full moon in your solar return, you can kind of see how those things play out and how this could potentially be a culmination point of that energy. But in terms of the houses, so the first house, solar return, sun in the first house, you'll be focusing on yourself. You might be focusing on your image. You might be focusing on your looks. You might be undergoing some sort of physical transformation or makeover that year. This is a year where you're focusing on your needs, your self-interest. It's your time to shine. This is also a time when you can have some career development or growth, or you can get some sort of recognition for something that you've been putting out there into the world. All eyes will be on you when you have the sun in the first house. And so you're sort of in the spotlight that year. It's not so much about, relationships or your money or whatever. It could be also partially if you're looking at the other planets in the chart. But in terms of the sun, the main focus is on your identity and your development of your identity out in the world for that year, your self-interest, your needs, your motivations. With the solar return sun in the second house, you're going to be focusing on finances, money, right? This is usually a year where money, unless you have some really hard aspects to the sun, along with, your solar return, it's a year where money can come in quite easily. You might be working really hard for your money. You might be focusing on balancing your budget, saving for an important purchase, or making an important purchase, like buying a home or buying a car or something along those lines. This is a year where you can get recognition for your work that you're doing out in the world through some sort of bonus or some sort of outside income. This might even be a year, depending on what's going on with your sun, where you have to focus more on money due to necessity, right? And so this is going to be where you're focusing on material possessions and what you value in terms of material possessions. The solar return Sun in the third house indicates that you're going to be focusing on communication. This is going to be a big year for you in terms of ideas, in terms of education, in terms of thinking about things in new ways. This could be a focus on your community, on your immediate surroundings. It could be a focus on travel. This is also, you know, with the Sun in the third house, maybe you'll purchase a new vehicle. This also has to do with short journeys. And so oftentimes when you have the solar return Sun in the third house, you might find yourself taking a lot of short trips, day trips, you know, where you're going somewhere that's a few hours away. This is also a time when you might think about embarking on a new form of education, or your relationship with the members in your community might become more important. Maybe you'll become more involved in your community, or you'll get to know your neighbors better, or there'll be some sort of interesting events that'll occur within your neighborhood that year. This could also be, you know, you getting in touch with your siblings or extended family members, opening up communication with them a little bit more, spending more time engaged with these types of people. And, you know, this is usually a busy year in terms of communication, paperwork, bureaucracy, that type of thing, where you're going to have a flight of new ideas, and you're going to want to communicate them. And so, you know, this is also a really good year where your mind is going to be stronger. So it's a good year to embark on some sort of educational pursuit, especially something practical. The solar return Sun in the fourth house is going to have you focusing on laying down roots. So the focus is on your home, your family, your property, family relationships. It could be a focus on your, you know, your family unit in childhood and sort of your ancestral lineage. And so this is usually a year where there's going to be changes made in your home and in your immediate surroundings, or in your family dynamic or family structure. A lot of times with the Sun in the in the fourth house, you might be making changes in terms of like making a move or renovating or changing something about your home, maybe expanding on your home. This could be you getting a new pet or a new family member. This could be just you focusing more of your energy and attention on your family and on your emotional well-being, your safe space, you know, the people that you care about the most, as opposed to focusing so much energy on your career and public reputation, which would have been 2 years prior, depending on, you know, where you're at in the cycle. The solar return Sun being in the fifth house, as I mentioned before in Johnny Depp's chart, it's the house of self-expression. It's the house of the things that you do because you love to do them. It's your passions. And so this is a year where you get to engage in the things that feel like play, that you love to do, your hobbies, your interests. This is a place for you to engage in more romance, to engage in more passion, to feel more fired up about life. You know, this is a really great energy for romance. Usually in the fifth house, it's romance, more along the lines of like short-term romance, love affairs, flings, things that are really passionate and exciting but are not necessarily long-lasting. And so if you have, you know, the Sun in the fifth house, if you have also placements going on in the seventh house with other planets and things like that, that could potentially be a year where a new romance could come in. But, you know, usually it's more associated with shorter term romance. It's the house of recreation. Usually when you have the Sun in the fifth house, you're going to be out exploring, doing things, being out, like going out to restaurants and clubs and, you know, concerts and things like that, venues where you're out and about a little bit more, where you're having fun out in the world. The solar return Sun in the sixth house has to do with work. It's your day-to-day routines and it's your health habits. This could be a year where you're focusing on your nutrition, you're focusing on your exercise routines, you're focusing on your day-to-day experience and establishing really good foundations in your routines in general. This is usually a year of working really hard. So usually you're working really hard towards some sort of work goal. And it's the house of work, it's the house of service. So it has to do more with your day-to-day experience with work as opposed to your overall career goals. Your focus could be on your relationships with your coworkers, or there could be a change in your location of employment, right? Because it's where you work in terms of like the actual, the actual workspace. And so that's going to be your focus, but usually it's a very busy year where you have a lot to do. You're focusing a lot of your energy on external activities and the physical reality and sort of the day-to-day grind. When you have the solar return Sun in the seventh house, this is the house of long-term romantic partnership and marriage. And so if you're looking to see when there can be new developments in that area of life, either through a new relationship or through, you know, new developments within a current relationship, that's where you're gonna, the seventh house is where you're gonna see it. If not from the sun, you'll see it with other planets. And so the sun in the seventh house indicates that you're gonna be focusing more on your interpersonal relationships. It doesn't always indicate that you're gonna get married or have a really important long-term romantic partnership, although it can, but it will be a focal point. So your focus could be on establishing really good relationships with the people that you care about most, with your close friends, with close family members even. This is a great time, a great year of signing contracts, making agreements, collaborating and connecting with people for business, all of that. And so this is a year where the focus is not on the self, which is the first house, it's on other people and your relationships with other people. When you have the solar return sun in the 8th house, this is an energy that's focused on potentially debt, other people's money, right? That could be one of the focal points. So if you're trying to pay off debts, this is a year when that could come about and you could do that a little bit more easily. This could also be a year where you take out a loan or important money comes from an outside source through a loan or an investment or inheritance or through your marriage partner as well. This is also a year where you're going to be doing a lot of introspection. This is the house of empowerment through figuring yourself out, right? Your true empowerment, learning who you are and utilizing that energy out in the world. This is a year where you might be digging up some old wounds, traumas, insecurities, vulnerabilities, and healing through that process, through that energy. So that way you feel much more empowered and much more in control of your life. This is the house of power and control issues. It shows where you give your power away to others and where you maybe use and abuse your power a little bit too much. And so this is going to be a rebalancing in the distribution of power. And usually this is an energy of where you're taking your power back. So you're taking your power back from underlying sort of repressed energy in terms of trauma, fears, insecurities that are driving your behavior externally. You're taking your power back very literally. Sometimes this can indicate power struggles in relationships, and so the power dynamics are changing. This is also the house of looking at the core issues that are causing things, right? This is the 8th house energy, so it's going really deep. And so, this could bring really deep healing from the inside out. This is a healing house. It's deeply regenerative, deeply restorative. And this also could have you looking at things that are a little darker, a little deeper, like the occult or things that are demonized or taboo a little bit more so this year, wanting to get to the bottom of things and not being afraid to really research and go there. And so that could, a lot of different things could occur with the sun in the 8th house. The solar return sun in the 9th house. This is usually a pretty good year. The sun likes to be in the 9th house. The 9th house is the house of foreign travel. So oftentimes when you have your sun in the solar return in the 9th house, you might find yourself with more opportunity to travel. You might find yourself exploring different forms of different philosophies, different forms of religion and spirituality. This is a good time to engage in some sort of higher educational pursuit, either through going to like college or getting a graduate degree or something like that. This is a really good time to do some introspection or to connect with a teacher that can help guide you in terms of looking at and assessing your moral values. This is a year where your beliefs about God, the universe, the world around you that frame your reality are likely to change in one way or another, or they're going to be highlighted. This is a year where your integrity is going to come into play, and acting on integrity is going to be key. And then when you move to the solar return in the 10th house, this one's pretty straightforward. The focus is on your career. And especially if you have really good aspects to the sun going on while the sun is in the 10th house in your solar return, this could be a year of incredible career growth and expansion, especially if you have when you have the sun right on your midheaven. That is going to be a year where you're going to get recognized, where you're going to get some sort of public recognition for something that you're putting out there in the world, usually through your career. So this is, as it says here, it's the house of your profession, prestige, status, public standing, corporation, politics, career. And so these are the themes that are going to be in focus. And this is going to be a year where you're going to be focusing a lot on what you're doing externally and on the outside. Even if you don't necessarily, even if you're somebody who doesn't work, your external reputation, your public reputation, the way that people see you is going to come into play a little bit more. Or your relationship with people in positions of power and authority over you, right? So this is how you deal with authority figures. That's going to be something that's going to be a focal point for the year ahead. When you come into the solar return in the 11th house, with the sun in the 11th house, this is going to be a year that's focused on your friends, your social networks, clubs, groups, organizations, people that you surround yourself with by choice. And so this is a year when you're going to want to be a part of something bigger than you. You're going to want to be a part of a group. You're going to want to feel like you're included. This is a year where you might spend much more time with your friends. You might join a new organization. You might do something new involving 11th house themes like social communication via the internet with groups of people, right? Social networks. This is a good year for you to also engage in some sort of altruistic venture. So doing some sort of charitable work, doing something that is going to benefit the greater good of all concerned. Your thoughts and your focus can turn more toward humanitarian types of pursuits. And so it's thinking about, okay, well, I'm doing all of this work out in the world. How can I give back? How can I connect with more people? How can I serve the group? Those types of energies can come up. But in general, it's a year where your focus is going to be on groups of people, networks, and friends. Good or bad, depending on what's going on with your sun, but in general, right? And then the 12th house. So the sun in the 12th house is going to be a year of rest and reprieve. It's going to be a year where you're going to be spending less time out in the world and out in the spotlight, and you're going to want to be turning inward a little bit more. You're preparing for some sort of new beginning, new cycle. It's the house of endings and letting go, and so you might have to let go of some old karma, some old connections, some old baggage that during this year that you have the solar return sun in the 12th house, because it is the house of endings. So that could be a year where you're letting go of a lot. This could be a year where you're going on some sort of retreat, because the 12th house rules very specific institutions. It rules hospitals, it rules prisons, it rules ashrams, it rules retreat centers, it rules monasteries, it rules asylums, it rules a lot of different institutions that are sort of behind the scenes. It rules brothels, right? It's anything that's hidden away from the world. It's a place that you go to do things in secret. And so you might be keeping a lot of secrets, that you're doing things in secret, wanting to keep to yourself, not telling other people what it is that you're working on. This is also an important year of spiritual development and introspection. And so focusing on your spiritual practice, focusing on your creativity, focusing on your dreams, diving into the realm of the subconscious and archetypes, and that type of energy is going to be very fruitful for you this year, because it's a preparation stage for you to sort of move into something new, because the next cycle, the next 10 to 11 year cycle of solar returns are going to start to occur in your first, fourth, 7th, and 10th house, and then you're going through that whole phase of restructuring again. And so this is like a preparation phase where you're going to get a lot of intuitive insight, a lot of psychic information, a lot of impressions and downloads. And this is also a great year for creativity of all kinds, especially creative writing or some sort of creativity where you hide yourself away from the world in order to create from a space of depth. And so that is the solar return sun in all 12 signs. And so I hope you guys found that helpful. If you have questions about, the sun and each sign for the solar return, you could always ask them in the comment section below. I do try to answer as many questions and respond to as many comments as possible on all of these videos. And if you are interested in learning more for yourself on how to do solar return charts, or how to just, figure out and sort through your own solar return, I do have a couple of recommendations. They're not a ton. There's not a lot of really good resources on solar return out there. So I'm going to give you the two that I have. The first one is, it's a chapter in a book called Astrology's Special Measurements. It's edited by Noel Teal. And there is actually a section in here. I bookmarked it so I could tell you guys about it. Where did that go? Oh, there it is. So by Mary Shea, it's called Solar Returns, Putting the Sun in Its Place. It's a giant chapter in this book, and this is actually a really good resource for looking into solar return. There's also articles in here from a bunch of other astrologers. Some of them are very well known. My teacher, Lynn Coiner, her work on Trans-Pluto is actually in this book, and so I'll post a link for this book on Amazon down in the description below for those who are interested in learning more. I also recently picked up this book secondhand. It's called Planets and Solar Returns by Mary Fortier Shea. Same person, actually, now that I'm looking at that, who wrote this. And this is more like a cookbook astrology book. So what it does is it's kind of like sun in this house means this, moon aspecting Venus means this, right? So if you're looking for something that's more basic, where you can, especially if you're not super familiar with astrology, where you can really look at your chart and pick apart the pieces, this is a really good resource as well. And I'll post the link to this book down below as well. And of course, you can always book a solar return reading with me too. And I'll post a link for booking readings down in the description below. I'm happy to do it. And of course, you can look at your solar return year ahead. I'm doing these videos. I'm really excited about it. And you can pre-order your video now. And I'll be posting one video per month. So I'll also be posting a free video where I'll go in, general energy for each sun sign for the year ahead. I'll be posting one per month, and I'll be posting that at the same time that these longer extended versions of the videos will be made available. And so each video will be posted 3 weeks prior to the sun moving into your sign. So I'm going to do it on the 1st of each month, beginning with March 1st with Aries. And so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, so anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Click that little red button down there. And I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye.